Hi everyone, welcome to WION Live broadcast from New York City. I'm your host, Susan Tehrani. First, let's take a look at some of the stories making headlines around the world. U.S. President Donald Trump posts on social media on losing India and Russia to China, says he wishes them well. The IDF carried out strikes on high-rise buildings in Gaza City that it claims was used to protect Hamas infrastructure. Israel claims Hamas has established underground infrastructure beneath the building. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says thousands of European troops could be deployed to Ukraine as part of post-war security guarantees. French President Macron has said 26 countries pledged an international force on land, sea, and air in Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin warns that any Western forces deployed to Ukraine would be a legitimate target for Moscow's army a day after Kyiv's allies said that they had committed to a troop presence in the event of a peace deal. China warns Philippines against raising trouble on the Taiwan question, saying any interference in China's internal affairs or efforts to undermine its territorial integrity would backfire, demands what it calls an end to provocations. Thailand tycoon Anutin Charnvirakul elected prime minister, winning more than half of parliamentary votes. Anutin's election ends a week of political crisis and deadlock in Thailand after Paetongtarn Shinawatra was removed. Indian Chief of Defense Staff General Anil Chauhan says the unresolved boundary dispute with China is the biggest national security challenge. This is followed by Pakistan's proxy war and its strategy of, quote, bleeding India by 1,000 cuts.
All right, so it's now time to take a look as to what is trending on WION's social media platforms. And tell us more on this, we're joined in the studio by my colleague Rahesha Sehgal. Over to you, Rahesha.
Thanks, Ali. Let's now take a look at what's actually trending across WION's social media platforms. First up, on WION's X page, we'll tell you about Representative Major Taylor Greene, who has hit back at US President Donald Trump, and this is over the Epstein files being a hoax, and warned that she, along with the other survivors, would create the list of the abusers and share them. So that's a story trending on WION's X page. Moving on to our YouTube channel, where the story that's trending is about the former US President Joe Biden, and who has recently underwent MOHS surgery to remove skin cancer. And on WION's YouTube channel, we'll tell you about the explain as to what is this surgery that Biden just underwent. Apart from that, moving on to WION's Facebook page, where the story that's trending is about Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has warned that Western troops in Ukraine would be legitimate targets for the Russian military. Now, his comments, what Putin clearly said, it comes after Macron's pledge of post-war security guarantees for Kyiv. That's what's trending on WION's Facebook page. Finally, on our website, we'll tell you about Indian origin engineer Amit Kshatriya, who has clearly been appointed as NASA's Associate Administrator and Chief Operating Officer. The agency's top civil service role to lead Moon to Mars missions, including Artemis as well. So these are the stories that are trending on WION's social media platforms.
Deadly and an all too familiar shadow has fallen over Central Africa. The Democratic Republic of Congo has declared a new outbreak of Ebola, with at least about 15 people already dead. In a country pushed to its limits by conflict, health teams are now in a pretty desperate race to contain one of the world's most feared diseases. Now, Ebola is a hemorrhagic fever born from a virus. It is transmitted to humans from animals. Fever, muscle pain, vomiting, diarrhea. A cruel progression leads to internal bleeding, organ failure, and it spreads through blood and bodily fluids and not by air. The patients remain infectious once symptoms appear, making rapid isolation vital. Now, for the Democratic Republic of Congo, this is alarmingly familiar terrain. Ebola has struck repeatedly. There have been 15 Ebola outbreaks since 1976. Violence, poverty and mistrust make containment brutal. Health workers face danger. Local communities resist. Supplies run short and the fragile system frays under each crisis. The global responders have mobilized the World Health Organization, which is deploying experts, testing labs, PPE treatments and the ERVEBO vaccine to stem the tide. Community outreach and surveillance are also being ramped up. And yet, as Congo continues to fight on, the virus knows few limits, threatening lives and draining hope and raising fears of yet another catastrophic spread.
Nous devons nous laver les mains régulièrement. Toute la population, nous devons, sans cela.
And our correspondent Luza Olani has sent us this report. Listen in.
Through a 34-year-old pregnant woman detected a few weeks ago, DRC is once again faced with the Ebola surge, as about 28 suspected cases with over a dozen deaths recorded so far, including health workers. Thankfully, lab tests have confirmed the Zaire strain of the Ebola virus, a highly deadly but vaccine-preventable variant. But the challenge now is deploying logistics to get vaccines to every corner. Now, authorities say the WHO teams are already supporting the response, deploying experts and medical supplies needed to protect health workers and care for patients. This is the first Ebola outbreak in the DRC since 2022, when a smaller outbreak in Equator province was contained in under 3 months. Health officials are leaning on the country's extensive experience with Ebola, but with transmission ongoing, case numbers are expected to rise. From Lagos, Nigeria, Louisa Olani, WION.
In California, a rise in COVID-19 cases and high levels of coronavirus in wastewater has at least one official recommending masking indoors. The State Department of Health now tracks diseases through wastewater, and it's been very effective since the pandemic.
It's really the best way to see how active the virus is in a given community. Wastewater actually looks directly at the amount of virus that's being excreted literally from our bodies into the wastewater across the community.
The CDC shows California is one of 21 states with high or very high levels of coronavirus in wastewater. They also show the number of COVID cases has risen and the epidemic trend is, quote, likely growing. Despite that, hospital admissions and deaths remain low.
We need to see this in context. In 2020, just in the community that I was serving as a health officer, we were seeing dozens of deaths every month. We are nowhere near that right now.
In Yolo County, health officials recommend people take extra precautions, including wearing masks indoors. County Health Officer Dr. Amy Sisson said, quote, based on current wastewater levels of the virus that causes COVID-19, I recommend that everybody in West Sacramento wear a mask when they are around others in indoor public spaces.
I think it's reasonable as a recommendation, but I think it's important to take this in context. The masks, just as a tool, have been so politicized that We want to make sure that we're not, overcalling it or undercalling it. And the fact is that as a tool, a mask is an effective way of preventing infection, period.
According to Willis, the best way to fight the coronavirus is vaccination.
High vaccination rates translates to lower mortality at the community level. And for an individual, it's the same. If you're vaccinated, you're much less likely to end up in the hospital. And that's just been proven over and over again. That is not a political statement. That is just a scientific reality.
Willis said the latest COVID-19 vaccine is effective and now available throughout California.
India is experiencing one of its longest and most challenging monsoon spells in decades. Continuous rainfall has brought widespread flooding and landslides in several northern states, leaving at least 776 people dead. The past 2 weeks have been the wettest for northern India in over 14 years, worsening an already difficult situation. In the state of Punjab, officials from the Disaster Management and Rehabilitation Department have reported that between the 1st of April and the 31st of August this year, 79 people have died, while 115 others have sustained injuries. The floods have hit some districts particularly hard. Gurdaspur has recorded nearly about 1.45 lakh people. Amritsar has about 1.17 people, Firozpur nearly 39,000 people, and Fazilka more than 21,500 people have been displaced. Now, these areas have witnessed heavy losses, with 37 deaths being confirmed and 3 people still unaccounted for. Rescue and relief operations are underway, with the Army, the Air Force, the BSF, the NDRF and several NGOs working together to provide some help. The Satluj River has overflowed into villages in Patiala and Jalandhar, adding to the burden on communities that are already displaced. Himachal Pradesh has recorded the highest number of casualties so far. Since the monsoon began on the 20th of June, the state has reported about 343 deaths. And according to the State Disaster Management Authority, of these, 183 deaths were caused by landslides. About 160 people have died in road accidents that have been linked to difficult weather conditions. The Indian Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir has also been very badly hit, with about 124 people losing their lives in rain-related incidents. Rescue and relief teams are still operating in the affected districts, where overflowing rivers and frequent flash floods in the hilly areas continue to create serious challenges. And WION senior special correspondent Idris Lone has sent us this report. Listen in.
Around 10,000 people have been moved from their houses in different locations across the Kashmir Valley after there were 2 breaches, one in Shalina and another in Zonipora in central Kashmir's Badgam district, as well as in South Kashmir's Pulwama district. We are right now standing at Shalina, where there was a breach yesterday, and due to that, as you can see, the whole area close by got flooded. There are commercial properties, residential properties in this area which have been completely inundated. As you can see in your visuals, the water still gushing in with speed into these areas. Now this water has started going into Srinagar as well. Parts of Srinagar city closer to the National Highway bypass area have started getting inundated as well. People have been asked to stay alert. Although the water level in the main tributary River Jhelum has started coming down, and the Met Department says because the weather is dry, it will come down further. But this breach that took place in the Badgam as well as in Pulwama district has led to flooding in many residential areas across the Kashmir division, and people have been asked to stay at safer places, while as rescue and relief operations by the government are being carried out at multiple locations. With video journalist Feroz, Idris Lone for WION World.
More bad news coming in from Afghanistan. A deadly quake has ripped through eastern Afghanistan, and rescue teams are racing against time to the aftershocks as the aftershocks do continue. The Sheikh shattered towns, yet women trapped in both rubble and Taliban law are now being left to die as the death toll has passed 2,200. Here's more.
The ground shook. A powerful magnitude 6.2 quake struck deep in the Hindu Kush, rippling villages to pieces. The air is thick with fear as survivors relieve the quake that struck the villages, describing panic, darkness, and heart-stopping tremors that refuse to let up.
Dust filled the air. Everything went dark, and I could not understand what was happening. I rushed toward the door to open it, but I couldn't because it was stuck due to the earthquake. I found the way to see my family, and I saw a room was collapsed and they were buried under it.
My brother is dead. My sister-in-law is dead. 2 of my nephews are dead. I have lost all of my family. I am the only one left. My old father and my little niece who is sick, and I sent her to Nangarhar for treatment.
Then came the aftershocks. Relentless jolts of 5.2 and 5.4 magnitude that shattered fragile hope and triggered fresh landslides. Terrified survivors huddle under broken walls, watching the sky near inaccessible ravines.
The danger of rockfalls, water flowing down from the mountains, and earthquakes, along with fear of God, has left us shocked and distressed. We experience 8 to 10 earthquakes a day, occurring every 10 to 15 minutes.
Through the chaos come stories of desperate searches. Men clawing through debris by hand. Emergency crews trekking miles through mountain passes. But for Afghan women, a darker truth lurks in the ruins. Taliban law enforces a brutal rule. No man is allowed to touch an unrelated woman. That rule, which may seem archaic to most of us in the outside world, is perhaps a diktat which cannot be broken even in such desperate times.
The danger of rockfalls, water flowing down from the mountains, and earthquakes, along with fear of God, has left us shocked and distressed. We experience 8 to 10 earthquakes a day, occurring every 10 to 15 minutes.
In empty streets and mountain villages, aid is running out. India and Russia are among the nations which have rushed critical supplies, including tents, medicines, and other items. The UN and world agencies warn of surging need: food, shelter, medical care. Hospitals overflow, tents sprout in ruined squares. But for many women, rules and rubble have become a deadly prison. The true toll may rise for days as invisible casualties remain unreached. Their voices lost in a system that does not see them. Bureau Report, WION, Oluswan. Well, Nepal has cracked down on a number of social media platforms, including Facebook, X, and even YouTube, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, Reddit, WhatsApp, and Snapchat. The Himalayan Kingdom's Ministry of Communications and Information Technology ordered the country's internet service providers to block access to 26 major social media platforms across the country. Now, Nepal's crackdown, it comes after the social media platforms failed to comply with the government's one-week deadline, that is, to register with authorities. Nepal's Supreme Court had issued a directive last month that requires all social media platforms to register with the authorities, purportedly to evaluate and monitor undesirable content, and that's following a cabinet meeting on August 25th. which is 1 week deadline, was issued by the ministry for all social media platforms to complete their registration in Nepal. The platforms that did not comply have now been banned until further notice. Besides registration with the government, the court order also stipulates the appointment of a local contact and compliance officer as well as a grievance redressal mechanism in Nepal. Platforms that went dark in Nepal include Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, YouTube, X, LinkedIn, Reddit, WhatsApp, Discord, Pinterest as well, Signal, Threads, WeChat, Quora, Tumblr, Clubhouse. There's more to this list. Rumble, Linemo, Jalao, Sol, Hamro Patro, MI Video and MI Wike 3. Not all apps have been stopped. The ones which are working are TikTok, Viber, WeTalk, Nimbus and Telegram, which have either registered or are in the procedure of registration, continuing to be available in Nepal. And for more on the social media crackdown there in Nepal, our correspondent Saloni Murarka has sent us this report.
Nepal has decided to gradually deactivate the social media platforms that are operating in the country without approval. This decision comes in line with the Supreme Court directive to regulate social media operating in the country without approval. Under the directive, all the platforms are supposed to register with the Ministry of Communication, secure a license within 3 months, renew the license every 3 years, and also appoint one contact person in the country. Many officials say that it was necessary for Nepal to bring some social media platforms to regulate them. However, many sections of the society have criticized this move and they say that it undermines the democracy and freedom of Nepal. Saloni Murarka for WION, World is One.
According to a Financial Times report, OpenAI is all set to produce its first AI chip in partnership with US semiconductor giant Broadcom. The chip is expected to go into production next year and will be used internally rather than being made available for external customers. Now, OpenAI's ChatGPT is among the world's leading AI chatbots with nearly 800 million people using it every week. It currently holds around 60% share of the AI chatbot market, but keeping such systems running takes enormous computation power, both for training the models and also operating them at scale. Now, to keep pace, OpenAI is exploring the idea of designing its own AI chips, which will help the company reduce reliance on outside suppliers and to cut costs. Last year, Reuters had reported that OpenAI was working with Broadcom and Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or the TSMC, to develop its first in-house chip. At the same time, the company was also using AMD and NVIDIA chips to keep up with the demand. Then in February this year, new reports suggested that OpenAI was preparing to cut its reliance on NVIDIA by developing its own AI chips, and sources told Reuters that the ChatGPT maker was finalizing the design on its first in-house chip, with plans to send it to TSMC for fabrication within months. On Thursday, Broadcom's CEO said that the company expects its AI revenue growth in fiscal 2026 to improve significantly after securing more than $10 billion in AI infrastructure orders from a new unmanned customer. The OpenAI's move follows similar efforts by Google, Amazon and Meta, which have developed custom chips to handle AI workloads amidst surging demand for computing power to train and run AI models.
Texas is on the verge of a major new abortion law, one that shifts enforcement from the state to its citizens. Lawmakers have passed House Bill 7, allowing private individuals to sue doctors, manufacturers, and distributors of abortion-inducing drugs if they send them into Texas. Successful lawsuits would carry damages of at least $100,000 per violation. The bill now heads to Governor Greg Abbott, who is expected to sign it. The measure is modeled after the Texas Heartbeat Act. It shields pregnant women from liability and allows exceptions in cases of miscarriage, ectopic pregnancy, or medical emergencies. Supporters say it closes loopholes created by telehealth providers in shield laws states, which allow doctors to prescribe and mail abortion pills across state lines. Senator Brian Hughes, the bill's sponsor, argued Texas must hold providers accountable for sending, quote, poisonous illegal drugs. Anti-abortion groups have praised the measure as one of the strongest efforts to restrict abortion by mail. But critics say it deputizes neighbors to spy on one another. Democratic Senator Carol Alvarado warned the law could create a climate of mistrust where even private conversations are twisted into evidence. The ACLU of Texas says it extends abortion restrictions far beyond state borders. If signed, challenges would be funneled to a newly created appeals court in Texas, seen as conservative-leaning. Opponents warned the law could spark fresh legal battles with states that have passed their own laws to shield their doctors from out-of-state prosecution for mailing abortion pills. The bleeding continues for discount carrier Spirit Airlines. The company is slashing service to a dozen cities as its financial troubles deepen. Starting in October, Spirit will no longer fly to Albuquerque, New Mexico, Birmingham, Alabama, Boise, Idaho, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Columbia, South Carolina, Portland, Oregon, and Salt Lake City, as well as 4 cities in California, Oakland, San Diego, Sacramento, and San Jose. Planned service in Macon, Georgia is now off the table. Spirit says it will reach out to passengers with refunds or options. The cuts come just weeks after Spirit filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, its second time in less than 2 years. After emerging in March, the Florida-based airline has lost nearly $257 million in just a few months. The restructuring plan includes shrinking the fleet and reducing staff. 140 captains will be demoted to first officers on October 1st, followed by 270 pilot furloughs in November. Hundreds of flight attendants have already taken voluntary leave. Despite the cuts, Spirit insists it is not preparing to shut down. But United Airlines is not taking any chances or waiting, announcing it will add flights to 15 cities early next year, including Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, and Las Vegas.
The Indonesian capital of Jakarta is on the edge. Hundreds of students are protesting in front of the parliament buildings, and they are demanding action against lawmakers' perks and police brutality. The protesters, in fact, feel their concerns were not adequately addressed despite meeting with members of the House of Representatives. Shouting slogans and also raising banners, they've denounced recent government actions demanding concrete steps and meaningful dialogue.
We don't want the House of Representatives to just invite us to calm the situation. We want concrete actions that benefit all Indonesians. Although I attended a hearing with them yesterday, we're still unsatisfied. We believe there are many changes that need to be made. As long as our voices aren't heard, we'll keep speaking out and conveying our aspirations.
Because this isn't just happening in Jakarta, it's also in Sumatra, Sulawesi, and Papua. Authorities are posting only apology videos on social media, which is not enough. Some of our friends met with parliament members, but it's clear their concerns haven't been adequately addressed. We need to keep pushing for real change. What's being said lacks certainty. Moving forward, as students, we want to fight for one key thing: protecting the people's sovereignty, no matter who's in power.
The protests began in Jakarta last week, rocking the world's third largest democracy, and have ever since escalated nationwide. A police vehicle hit and killed a motorcycle taxi driver on the 28th of August, fueling further unrest. The rights groups report 10 deaths in the protests, which have also sparked looting and rioting. The protests have forced President Prabowo Subianto to revoke some perks for the lawmakers. He's ordered for a full investigation into the incident and has vowed to take action against the rioters and the looters.
The Trump administration is rolling out a new plan to pay local law enforcement agencies that help immigration officials carry out deportations. Starting October 1st, local and state police taking part in the federal 287G program will have salaries, benefits, and even some overtime costs covered. Officers who hit certain enforcement targets can also qualify for quarterly bonuses up to $1,000 each. The 287G program isn't new, but it has expanded significantly under President Donald Trump. It now includes nearly 960 agreements across 40 states, with more than 8,500 officers trained and another 2,000 in training, according to DHS. What is new is that these partnered agencies are about to get paid for their cooperation with the federal government to help find and arrest criminal migrants that the DHS describes as the worst of the worst. The new DHS incentive would cover salaries and benefits of trained officers, and the officers themselves can receive up to $1,000 each quarter, depending on their success rate in capturing criminal migrants. On top of that, ICE is in the middle of a massive hiring push. The agency wants to add 10,000 new officers by the end of this year and says it has received more than 100,000 applications. ICE offered signing bonuses up to $50,000, student loan repayment, and starting salaries, which can top $90,000. ICE's hiring push and incentivizing new partnerships with local police are part of President Trump's larger immigration agenda, one that calls for mass deportations and a major expansion of enforcement. Supporters say the strategy is needed to boost public safety. Critics argue it will damage trust between police and migrant communities.
We are at a recruitment fair for ICE. I want to talk to folks and see who wants to be a deportation officer and why.
I'm a college student, recently graduated.
Former flight attendant.
I did 8 years in the Marine Corps.
Doors haven't even opened yet, and already there's a line of more than 100 people waiting to get in. ICE saw this event advertised on ICE's social media account. The benefits they're offering are pretty extensive. There's an up to $50,000 signing bonus, $60,000 in student debt reduction, up to 25% overtime rate. The Trump administration is adding tens of billions of dollars to the budget and is trying to make immigration enforcement really the center of law enforcement in this country right now. This is the East Sports Stadium in Arlington, Texas. It's usually a space for gamers. Today, ICE is hiring for a variety of different positions. The lines have been the longest for deportation officers. That has the lowest bar to entry. College degree is not necessarily required, and ICE is trying to hire 10,000 deportation officers. The signage behind me says, "Defend the Homeland." What were the attractions of working for ICE?
I'm very patriotic.
You know, guarding America, guarding the homeland.
When I saw Uncle Sam pointing that finger, I just had it in my heart. And you're thinking, look at this guy, he's an immigrant. He wants to become a deportation officer. Doesn't make any sense to you, makes 100% sense to me.
We're seeing a bit of the speed and scale that the Trump administration is trying to move at. They're moving people in and out assembly line style. They're offering drug testing on site, and they're even saying that you could walk out of here with a tentative offer letter to start a new job at ICE.
I was able to get an offer today. I accepted, and then I went and did all my process, my fingerprinting and my drug testing. Background check is next, and then of course training.
There's a lot of criticism of ICE and its tactics in enforcing immigration law. You can hear the protesters behind me shouting at applicants as they walk in, calling them Nazis and fascists, and even identifying them by name. They're looking up people's license plate numbers. So are you worried about being called a Nazi?
You know, I don't mind risking my freedom to safeguard yours.
ICE has become kind of a really polarizing agency.
This is a father and son. You can't hide together.
It reflects the big divides within America. It's a flashpoint for how people feel about Trump's mass deportation agenda.
People in Chicago are preparing for a National Guard deployment there, along with more ICE agents. The president said it will happen as part of his crackdown on crime and illegal immigration across the country. Crews started boarding up windows at an ICE detention center. It's serving as a primary processing center. Federal agents have already started arriving, with operations expected this weekend.
They're really good people. They don't want to stand on the street corners of the city of Chicago. They don't want to invade an American city. The National Guard's men and women, they don't want to do that. They're being ordered to do it.
The good reason that the president states for this whole controversy is to reduce crime. Well, if that's his goal, why is he just picking areas that have Democratic governors and Democratic mayors? He's ignoring states with Republican leadership where crime is even worse.
Local leaders say as many as 300 ICE agents could be sent to
But
Chicago.
first, Chicago is bracing for a large-scale ICE operation that could start here in just a few hours. Let's take a live look right now at Chicago's naval station, Great Lakes, which is being used by ICE during this crackdown. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker warning that immigration officers could cause mayhem this weekend. And the governor also says the weeks-long operation could also expand to include the National Guard, a move that President Trump has threatened but not confirmed. News Nation's Xavier Walton is live outside an ICE facility in Broadview, Illinois this morning. Xavier, any movement there that you're seeing, and how soon could we see this get underway?
Hey, Marky, good morning. Yeah, it is early, but we've already seen some movement just within the last 5-10 minutes or so. We saw some detainees come out of this fence here in a white van and be driven away. Where they were going, we don't know, but we do know that they did leave this location. But after weeks and weeks of buildup, this showdown between Chicago and the Trump administration when it comes to ICE or immigration enforcement, it seems to have come to a head. And this facility, this building here just behind us, Ground Zero, as you mentioned, for planned protests, which is going to be beginning in just a matter of hours. This facility set to become the central processing hub for the administration's new immigration push, running around the clock, so to speak, for the next 45 days or so. Immigration advocates say this building where we're at has no beds, no showers, no cafeteria. Local reports suggest up to 300 ICE agents could be on the ground here as early as today. And as all of this comes in, Chicago prepares for Mexican independence celebrations next week. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker encouraging people to celebrate as planned, but warning residents and activists to be ready for potential chaos.
Part of their kind of nefarious plan is begin with ICE, cause mayhem on the ground, and by doing that, say that there's a need for military troops on the ground to protect ICE. Don't play into their hand, and if you have the opportunity, please protest, pull out your phone, video everything that they're doing.
So you can already kind of tell there, Governor J.B. Pritzker kind of preparing everybody for the possibility of a ramp up when it comes to ICE enforcement. He says he's been told that ICE will have rather full assembly at some point today. When that is, not sure. But operations expected, Marky, to begin on Saturday.
Yeah, Pritzker does seem convinced that a National Guard deployment will follow this ICE operation. What is the latest on plans to deploy troops to Chicago?
Yeah, Marky, that's a big talker. That's a good question because everybody seemingly wants to know. But at this point, there has been no real concrete evidence that Guard has been officially, called into the city of Chicago this week. President Trump first said troops would be sent to Chicago, then kind of walked it back, sort of suggesting other cities like New Orleans potentially could be next. Still, Governor Pritzker vowing to take legal action to sue if the National Guard sets foot in the city of Chicago.
Following a massive ICE raid at a Hyundai plant in Georgia, officials say roughly 450 undocumented migrants were apprehended. Now, Thursday's raid was carried out by multiple state and federal law enforcement agencies, including ICE, the FBI, and the Georgia State Patrol. I want to bring in CNN's Isabel Rosales, who's been monitoring this. So, Isabel, what is the latest this morning?
Omar, good morning. With more than 450 people apprehended, this marks what appears to be one of the largest ICE raids at a single site in the 22-year history of this agency. Now, here's what we know. This happened at the Hyundai Meta plant site. This is in Ella Bell, Georgia. This is just 25 miles or so west of Savannah. And according to the Associated Press, this raid stopped construction of this factory that's being built to produce batteries for electric vehicles. This same site, this same project, this was touted by Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp, who called it the largest economic development site in the state's history. Now, we have video that we're showing in pieces here of masked and armed agents there at the site, giving out orders while officers raided the facility. We can also see workers here in hard hats and vests. They were lined up as this was ongoing. On site was ICE, Georgia State Patrol, FBI, DEA, ATF, They were executing, Omar, a search warrant that DHS says is part of an ongoing criminal investigation into this, quote, allegations of unlawful employment practices and other serious federal crimes. They're saying that this sends a clear and unequivocal message, too, that they're taking this very serious. And here is the special agent in charge, what he had to say about this raid.
We are making many arrests of undocumented individuals. We have encountered many lawful employees working here, United States citizens and lawful permanent residents, and they are, of course, being released.
Meanwhile, Hyundai says it is cooperating with law enforcement, saying this: we are committed to abiding by labor and immigration regulations. And meanwhile, Omar, on this same day, hundreds of miles away in upstate New York, another large raid at a work site. Dozens of workers at a family-owned plant that makes nutrition bars were also apprehended during an ICE raid. CNN affiliate WSTM reports that about 60 workers were detained. New York's governor condemned this raid, saying it doesn't make their streets safer. And the owner of that nutrition plant told the New York Times that the workers had legal documentation to work in the U.S., calling this ICE raid a, quote, overkill. Omar.
Well, Isabel, thank you for bringing us those details. The scale of those raids notable at the very least.
A popular festival in Grant Park has been postponed because of concerns about ICE activity. The popular El Grito Festival, scheduled for September 13th and 14th, was postponed because the organizers say it puts their community at risk, and that's a risk they're not willing to take. Governor Pritzker has been warning that ICE agents could try to target Mexican Independence Day events, things like community picnics and parades. I asked the governor where that information came from, and he cited unnamed sources. So I reached out to ICE to ask whether it was true. I've yet to hear back from them. Organizers are still asking people to celebrate Mexican Independence Day in a safe, respectful, and responsible way.
A battered Iran is now looking east as it courts the dragon in Beijing's lair. A secret deal, a secret missile deal with China and Russia and China trying to shield Iran from the upcoming European sanctions in the United Nations. We tell you more in this report.
The air over West Asia crackles with uncertainty as Tehran claws its way back from a punishing conflict with Israel. Iran's prized missile arsenal, once the backbone of its regional deterrence, lies empty. Now in the diplomatic shadows, the Iranian lion has found a dance partner in the Chinese dragon. In Beijing's heart, as red banners billowed and troops marched in breathtaking formation, Iran's president took his seat beside power players Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. This wasn't just diplomacy, it was spectacle, as China's massive parade sent a booming message, a world order restraint to Western dominance. In Beijing, Chinese President Xi Jinping met with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, where the two leaders vowed to deepen their partnership.
China is willing to work with the international community, including Iran, to promote the building of a more just and equitable global governance system and join hands to build a community with a shared future for humanity.
Iran attaches great importance to developing relations with China and regards China as a comprehensive strategic partner. No matter how the international and regional situation evolves, we are willing to work with China to implement the 25-year comprehensive cooperation plan between our two countries.
The West has long accused China of supplying weapons to Iran. Now, there are reports that Chinese engineers are reportedly providing technical know-how and training to Iran's military-industrial complex. Discreetly rebuilding what the war destroyed. Again in Beijing, the Iranian president held another important meeting with his Russian counterpart, Putin. Russia and China are together speaking out against the new European sanctions at the United Nations, signaling a unified Eastern front for embattled Tehran. Beijing and Moscow have formed a diplomatic shield, joining Iran to vehemently reject European moves to restore crippling sanctions on Tehran. Their message is unified and clear. The era of uncontested Western pressure is over.
Giving all praises, honor, and glory to our power, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Rachah, Kodash. Double honor to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the whole free elect of the tabernacles of David. Scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, and you may be, wherever you may be. Shalom. All right, I'm going to get into a couple scriptures here real quick that I thought about when I was seeing the last news clip that we just played. Now, I'm not saying that this event is playing out already as of yet. Apparently not, but just very interesting, you know, with the China, because they send the dragon and the whatever they call it, which when they say the dragon, they're referring to China, but we're referring to what the scriptures say here. Okay, in 2nd Ezra chapter 15, and it says in verse 28, it says, "Behold, in horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots." All right, the nations of the dragons of Arabia, all right, are obviously talking about, you know, these so-called Arabic countries. Okay, it says shall come out with many chariots. You know, in modern day times, it's talking about just their number of their army, which you can even jump over to Ezekiel chapter 38. It talks about the same thing, different armies here and there, and so on and so forth. Coming down with great wrath and storm, all right, like a cloud. So it says, "And the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon the earth." And you know, just like a wind blows. So this great army is going to be marching, okay, on their destination, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble, because it's going to be such a great army. All right, amassing all the so-called Arabic nations together and having them fight and march toward whatever locations. All right, it's going to be a very great army, and so people are going to be afraid because there are a lot of Arabic countries. Okay, they're all over, and we're going to get to a point that I'm trying to make here. It says, "Also the Carmanians raging in wrath." Now, so who are the Carmanians? All right, it's the Persians, the modern day Persians, being the Iranians. All right, and we see those Iranians have tension right now with the so-called Israelis, all right, the Amalekites. But also you have, which is not nothing new, but you've always had tension between those Arabic countries and Iran, okay, because of, I mean, they do want regional dominance, but also a great separation from having each of them trying to gain the biggest regional dominance is also religious, because you have the Sunni Muslims and then you have the Shiite Muslims, and the biggest one to mention amongst each, all right, is Saudi Arabia and Iran. So you have, they're both under the same somewhat religion, but some are Shiite Muslims, some are Sunni Muslims, and that's always been a great divide and tension between them, as well as they want that regional dominance. Okay, so you see that tension there between them already, and then you have, you know, this talk here with China, you know, and Iran. Okay, and so as a result, it says, "Also the Carmanians, the Iranians, raging in wrath, shall go forth as the wild boars," because I believe in the ancient times they actually rode, if I'm correct, it was these people who actually rode donkeys, because they had a shortage of horses or something like that. But anyways, it says, "Like the wild boars of the wood." Okay, it says, "And with great power shall they come." And if you know anything about boars, majority of times boars don't stop once they attack. They also have those tusks, and they can gore you with the tusks. And they're very tough creatures, all right? They may be, you know, short and stout, but they're pretty huge, all right? You know, furry little pigs there with tusks. And so they're actually very dangerous creatures, okay? It says, and they shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, okay, and with great power shall they come, also referring to just their military might, okay, and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians, okay, areas mentioned like Syria, maybe parts of Turkey, Iran, I don't know, maybe Georgia, Armenia, all these different places that are mentioned also in Ezekiel 38, okay, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. And then shall the dragons have the upper hand, the so-called Arabic nations, remembering their nature, which is what? A wild man, which I want to get in the blue letter, because I want to grab what it means to be wild. So Genesis 16:10, it says, and the angel of the Lord Yahweh said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it should not be numbered. Is it this chapter? I think it's Genesis 16:10. If not, we can just punch it up. Okay, yeah. And yeah, it's further down. Yep. And the angel of Yahweh said unto her, behold, thou art with child, and shall bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, Yashma'Allah, because Yahweh had heard thy affliction, which the word, one of the words there means Shemai, which means to hear. All right, so Yahweh has heard. All right, Yashma'Allah, okay, because Yahweh had heard thy affliction. And here it is right here. He will be a wild man. Okay, a wild man. Okay, and wild here is para'ah. Okay, para'ah, which means a wild ass. Okay. See, a donkey. So it was either them. I can't remember exactly if it was these Iranians, okay, the ancient Persians, or if it was these Arabic nations that rode in on donkeys because they had a shortage of horses. But as far as what we're reading now, it says a wild ass, right? The African wild ass, which we know even today, you got these Muslim nations all over Africa. A wild ass or African wild donkey is a wild member of the horse family, Equidae. The species is thought to be the ancestor of the domestic donkey, which is sometimes placed within the same species. They live in the deserts and other arid areas of the Horn of Africa in Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Somalia. Right, so wild ass just as a wild donkey. Okay, I was hoping that we can get some of his characteristics or something like that. Yeah, but I mean, you pretty much get it. Oh, here you go, behavior. The African wild ass is primarily active in the cooler hours between it says the Somali wild ass is also very agile and nimble-footed, capable of moving quickly across boulder fields in the mountains. Okay. On the flat, it has been recorded reaching speeds of 70 kilometers per hour or 43 miles per hour. Pretty fast for a donkey. In keeping with these feats, its soles are particularly hard and its hooves grow very quickly. Mature males and fin large territories around 23 kilometers. Marketing with donkeys. Look, that's crazy. It says, due to the size of these ranges, the dominant male cannot exclude other males. Rather, intruders are tolerated. Okay, and that's pretty much what's going on right now. Not saying that they have some kind of dominion, because even the Saudi Arabians are living on a portion of our land. But going back to what we talked about, the tension between the so-called Arabics, all right, big portion of them, the Saudi Arabia, and these Iranians, who they both have that Muslim background, but you have one Sunni Muslim and one Shiite Muslim, and they both want that regional dominance there. They've always had tension one with another. It says, rather, intruders are tolerated, recognized, and treated as subordinates, and kept as far away as possible from any of the resident females. In the presence of, we don't even wear that. Wild asses can run swiftly, almost as fast as a horse. However, unlike most of mammals, their tendency is not to flee right from a potentially dangerous situation, but to investigate first before deciding what to do. when they need to, they could defend themselves with kicks from both their front and hind legs. Okay, so they got it all around, somewhat defense mechanism. Okay, but yeah, wild ass. All right, so that's what it says that they're going to be like. Okay, so a wild ass. All right, remember his nature, which is a wild man. Okay, his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Okay, and as we mentioned before, when you look at how many so-called Arabic countries, or at least the areas where they live, and they're really spread out all over. Okay, all over the so-called area of the Middle East. All right, there are a lot of so-called Arabic countries. So actually, to leave that here, jump back over here. So it says, and then shall the dragons have the upper hand. Okay, so they're gonna get the best at some point, remembering their nature, which is what? To be a wild man, as we just read, to a wild ass and everything like that. And if they shall turn themselves, conspiring together in great power to persecute them. So come all these so-called Arabic countries, all right, coming together, all right, him dwelling in the midst of his brethren, right? Then these shall be troubled, bled, and keep silence through their power, and shall flee. So yeah, they're gonna get the best of them, okay, at some point. All right, this tension between Iran or whatever. And like I said, it's not playing out yet. And actually, how things play out are always the interesting thing, because it's one thing to read a scripture, it's another thing to see how the Lord brings it about. Okay. Yeah, I don't think we need any more. Yeah, and from the land of the Assyrians shall the enemy besiege them and consume some of them, and in their hosts shall be fear and dread and strife among their kings. Behold, clouds from the east, which is talking about armies, okay, because you have, like it speaks about the Euphrates River drying up to make way for the kings of the east. As far east as China, is if you're talking about land, next to the ocean, China, and north of that is Russia. But if you're talking about actually even past that, then you'll get as far as Japan. And in between there, you got, India. If you go a little south, you got the lands of the Stan. Okay, you got the Korean areas. Okay, so the kings of the east. All right, clouds from the east and from the north. All right, because Russia's up north. And Ezekiel 38 speaks about Georgia, Armenia, Turkey, all these different areas there. Okay, and Russia's the north. Okay, the north country. To the south, and they are very horrible to look upon, full of wrath and storm. Right, those great armies. So everybody's amassing for World War III, but certain things just have to play out in certain ways. As a matter of fact, let's get this before we end it. Because this was intended to be quick, just something that popped in my mind as I listened to that particular news piece there. So Zephaniah, actually, I think I was right for yeah. Yeah, I was right the first time. What was I looking for? Can't think of the scripture now. I want to say it's 3. Yeah, 3 and 8. I was thinking of 15 for whatever reason. Zephaniah 3 and 8. It says, therefore wait ye upon me, said the Lord Yahweh, until the day that I rise up to the prey being the heathen nations. My determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour upon them my indignation, his righteous anger, even all my fierce anger, for all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. And that's what the Lord is doing. He's creating all kinds of different tensions between all kinds of different countries, and it's all putting them on one side or the other. Okay, an American / Israeli side of things, NATO, EU, or whatever, or on the BRICS side of things as one of the plus countries, or one of their affiliate countries. Okay, so that's what's happening, right? So that's why you see this person tension against this person, that person tension against that person tension against that person's ally, and this ally tension against that person's ally, and so on and so forth. It's all to create that great, battle of World War III that would take place mainly in the so-called Middle East, all right, over there in the East, in Asia. But there are things that are going to happen here in Babylon the Great as well, which includes war amongst Jacob's trouble. But the biggest portion of World War III is going to happen, okay, in the Valley of Yahweh Shabbat, as read in Joel chapter 3. all right, in the so-called Middle East. And so that was just a little, reading from 2nd Ezra chapter 15, just looking at the tensions, between different countries there, just kind of taking a dive into the scriptures real quick. So, Lord willing, you edify. Say shalom. There was probably other things that we could have talked about in all the news, but it would cause me to record over all the news, and it's long enough as is. That was one of the main things that popped up. But the last thing I have here is we're gonna play is a blood moon. Okay, so maybe all the other news is edifying as well. Okay, so shalom.